So we are here. We are going to be wrapping up our study of the book of Judges tonight, and we are going to be hitting rock bottom with our people in Judges. Things are just going to continue to get worse and worse um, until the book ends, and then we'll pick up where we leave off sometime in the fall, probably. Before we go ahead and jump back into Judges, is there anything hanging out or anything still on our minds from last week that could use a little more discussion or clarification, if I can offer that? And if not, that's okay. All right, let's go ahead and turn to Judges chapter 17. And we are going to read verses 1 through 13. There we are. Tom, will you go ahead and share with us, please, 1 through 6? And Mark, can you follow up with 7 through 13?
There was a man in the hill country of Ephraim whose name was Micah. He said to his mother, "The 1,100 pieces of silver that were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse and even spoke it in my hearing, that silver is in my possession. I took it, but now I will return it to you." And his mother said, "May my son be blessed by the Lord." Then he returned the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother, and his mother said, "I consecrate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son to make an idol of cast metal." So when he returned the money to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave it to the silversmith, who made it into an idol of cast metal, and it was in the house of Micah. This man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and teraphim, and installed one of his sons, who became his priest. In those days there was no king in Israel. All the people did what was right in their own eyes.
Now there was a young man of Bethlehem in Judah, of the clan of Judah. He was a Levite residing there. This man left the town of Bethlehem in Judah to live wherever he could find a place. He came to the house of Micah in the hill country of Ephraim to carry on his work. Micah said to him, "From where do you come?" He replied, "I'm a Levite of Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm going to live wherever I can find a place." Then Micah said to him, "Stay with me and be to me a father and a priest, and I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, a set of clothes, and your living." The Levite agreed to stay with the man, and the young man became to him like one of his sons. So Micah installed the Levite, and the young man became his priest and was in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, "Now I know that the Lord will prosper me because the Levite has become my priest."
So, first and foremost, what jumps out to us as being highly problematic about this story?
Creation of an idol.
Yeah, and I think it's especially interesting that the mother said, "May my son be blessed by the Lord. I consecrate the silver to the Lord from my hand to my son to make an idol of cast metal. I consecrate it to the Lord so we can make an idol out of it." It just, wow. Yeah, this is, like I said, we're going from bad to worse here in Judges. So this is bad enough. He makes a shrine. He made an ephod, which we believe in the books in the Torah. That term refers to the priest's garment, the breastplate that has, I believe it's 12 precious stones representing the 12 tribes, and that at a certain point people would make idols and create a garment to put on the idol that kind of mimicked the priest's garment. So that's pretty bad. and the teraphim seem to have been some sort of household gods, perhaps representing deceased ancestors. So we've got seemingly a whole collection of idols here, and this guy Micah is, pretty excited about all this idol worship. So this is bad enough. What's even worse? What does he do next? That just when you wonder if it can get any worse, he says, "Oh yeah, watch this."
He hires a Levite priest.
Mm-hmm. Because what are the Levites supposed to be doing?
Yeah. He pays him to do it.
Yeah, the Levites are consecrated as kind of the keepers of the holy things in Israel. They are a priestly tribe. They are kind of in charge of tending to the worship life of the people. And yeah, he hires a Levite to be the priest for this idol. So he's kind of reaching in and pulling from the people who certainly should know better, but the people whose job it is to ensure proper worship. And now this guy Micah has come and brought one of them over so that he can help lead the idol worship. So I mean,
And he's kind of calling him a good luck charm. He thinks he's going to be a good luck charm.
and again, it just blows me away. I know the Lord will prosper me because the Levite has become my priest. Okay, he was not. He's supposed to be the Lord's priest, and
Mhm.
now you have him leading this idol worship, and you think God is going to bless you for that.
But
What?
He started out as a thief.
Mm-hmm.
To start
Stealing
with, he was a
Stealing
thief.
from his mother, of all
Yeah.
people. Yeah. So I mean, again, it's just this interesting insight into the mindset, and this is not. Well, the specifics of the story are probably unique to ancient Israelites. The mindset, I don't think, is, and as we've said before, I think it is the struggle in every generation of faithful people. Again, we probably are not going to create a cast image of some other deity, but we may very well put pursuit of something else in front of our faithfulness to God. We may very well put all of our hope and trust in something other than God, and that is exactly the same thing. For as different as a lot of the things around us are from the time of Judges, that central struggle of, are God's people going to remain faithful to God, that that struggle continues right down to today.
I've had somebody return something that they stole from me that I didn't know that they stole from me. And it's not a real happy day. It's like they expect to be celebrated because they're returning it. And it's like, yeah, I think you should not have taken it in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, you're at a certain point, you're probably glad to have this thing returned, but
Mhm.
kind of feel that sense of violation. Yeah, people wanting credit for stuff they're supposed to do. Well, yeah, I'm glad you returned it, but yeah, you shouldn't have stolen it in the first place. So yeah, we've got idol worship running rampant, which now they are recruiting Levites to help lead the idol worship. So this is bad. And but wait, there's more. This is turning into a Springer-esque type of setup here. So it's kind of like this moment where we say, well, guess what? He knows now. He's been watching backstage. It goes on. Nick, will you share with us, please, Judges 18, verses 14 through 20?
Then the 5 men who had gone to spy out the land, that is Laish, said to their comrade, "Do you know that in these buildings there are an ephod, teraphim, and an idol of cast metal. Now therefore consider what you will do. So they turned in that direction and came to the house of the young Levite at the house of Micah and greeted him, while the 600 men of Danites, armed with their weapons of war, stood by the entrance of the gate. The 5 men who had gone up to spy out the land proceeded to enter and take the idol of cast metal, the ephod, and the teraphim. The priest was standing by the entrance of the gate with 600 men armed with the weapons of the war. When the men went into Micah's house and took the idol of cast metal, the ephod, the teraphim, and the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" They said to him, "Keep quiet, put your hand over the mouth, and come with us and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for you to be a priest to the house of one person, or to be a priest to a tribe and clan in Israel?" Then the priest accepted the offer. He took the ephod, teraphim, and the idol and went along with the people.
So Micah is over here sitting pretty with his nice idols, and he has a Levite to help him worship the idols. And what happens?
They get stolen.
Yeah, some other Israelites show up and they steal the idol. And what did they do with the priest?
Took him too.
Yeah,
Made
and
him a better offer.
yeah, they
better
kind of couch it
bribe.
in terms of, we can do even better. Is it better to be priest for one person or for a whole tribe? But to think about it from the perspective of the author of Judges, this means this man is now responsible not just for helping this one person go down the path of idolatry, but now he's going to lead the whole tribe down the path of idolatry. So you can kind of see just the extent to which so much has been turned upside down by this point. So not only are they wholeheartedly, the Danites at least, they are wholeheartedly into idol worship. They are now stealing from other Israelites, and they are proud of it. They're going to get this priest and tell him, guess what? This is like a big promotion for you. So, man, it just...
Sounds like a good basketball player from one school getting a better money offer to go to another school.
Mm-hmm. And again, just when you think it's not going to get any worse, I hope everybody is sitting down, because it is about to get worse. Let's see. Jane, will you share with us, please, chapter 19, verses 22 through 26? And then Carol, if you can jump in with 27 through 30.
While they were enjoying themselves, the men of the city, a perverse lot, surrounded the house and started pounding on the door. They said to the old man, the master of the house, "Bring out the man who came into your house so that we may have intercourse with him." And the man said, "The master of the house went out to them and said to them, 'No, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Since this man is my guest, do not do this vile thing. Here are my virgin daughter and his concubine. Let me bring them out now. Ravish them and do whatever you want to them. But against this man, do not do such a vile thing." But the men would not listen to him. So the man seized his concubine and put her out to them. They wantonly raped her and abused her all through the night until the morning. And as the dawn began to break, they let her go. As morning appeared, the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was until it was light.
In the morning, her master got up, opened the doors of the house, and when he went out to go on his way, there was his concubine laying at the door of the house, with her hands on the threshold. "Get up," he said to her, "we are going." But there was no answer. Then he put her on the donkey, and the man set out for his home. When he had entered his house, he took a knife and, grasping his concubine, he cut her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. Then he commanded the men whom he sent, saying, "Thus shall you say to all the Israelites, has such a thing ever happened since the day that the Israelites came up from the land of Egypt until this day? Consider it, take counsel, and speak out."
So yeah, yeah, like I said, just when you thought it wasn't going to get any worse, here we get this. What other biblical story does this kind of remind us of, or what story does this echo?
When Lot had the two visitors come to his store, he offered his daughters.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, very similar to Sodom and Gomorrah, and it seems to be more that people want to violate the relationship between host and guest that is the big problem. And again, this is a really critically, crucially important part of the culture, and in a lot of places still is. In my travels in the Middle East, that idea of welcoming a guest and you as a guest, of course, being open to hospitality, it's really it's a huge part of the culture. And if you think of they made a movie out of it. I think it was a book first. The movie was called Lone Survivor. It was about an American, I don't know if he was a soldier or a Navy SEAL. He was an American military person, and his unit got caught in an ambush in Afghanistan, and he escaped and made it into this village in Afghanistan. And one of the villagers took him in, and these are rural Afghan people. They're not necessarily the most American loving folks in the world, but it was so deeply ingrained in this man that when a person comes to you in need, you welcome them in and you help them. And he knew the Taliban was going to hear about this and show up. And he said, "You know what? This is who we are. We take care of and we protect our guests. So, you know what? If the Taliban comes, they're just going to have to get this guy over my dead body." And of course, in the movie, the Taliban shows up, and then all of a sudden, at the last minute, the American helicopters show up and blow the Taliban guys all away, and it's fantastic. But that mentality of this is how seriously we take our commitments to our guests, it probably greatly disturbs us, as so many things in this story do. But that's kind of the mentality, and that people would think this is okay to try and violate that key social understanding is just awful. But then, the concubine has already been raped and abused all night, and then the guy cuts her into pieces and sends her body to the rest of the tribes. And excuse me. And in the beginning of chapter 20, we hear about the message he sends out to the rest of Israel, saying, "This is what these people this is what the Benjaminites, what's the Benjaminites? The people in Gibeah, the Benjaminites. This is what they did. This is how awful it is. This is where this limb has come from." And so they gather. Well, we'll actually get to what they do with that. So he cuts this poor woman up and sends her body parts all across Israel. And then we get to chapter 20, verses 12 through 17. I will take us through that. The tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What crime is this that has been committed among you? Now then, hand over those scoundrels in Gibeah, so that we may put them to death and purge the evil from Israel. But the Benjaminites would not listen to their kinsfolk, the Israelites. The Benjaminites came out together of the towns of Gibeah to go out to battle against the Israelites. On that day, the Benjaminites mustered 26,000 armed men from their towns, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah. Of all this force, there were 700 picked men who were left-handed. Every one could sling a stone at a hare and not miss. And the Israelites, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 armed men, all of them warriors. And then the conclusion of, there's some detail about the battle there. And then the conclusion of it down in verse 35, the Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel. And the Israelites destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day, all of them armed. So not only do we have idol worship going on, but as we said close to the beginning of the study, there is going to be a lot of, at times, grotesque violence in Judges. And the point of Judges talking about all this violence is not to glorify it or lift it up, but to say, when we do not live by the covenant, this is the sort of thing that happens. So this violence is a consequence of people refusing to abide by the covenant. It is not a punishment for it. It is kind of the author's way of saying, when we turn and walk away from God, this is what we're walking into. And so we now are at a point where there is war between the tribes. So people have been fighting this campaign to take control of the land, and now they're fighting against each other. Let me pause there. Thoughts, insights,
What
questions, which I may or may not be able to answer?
was the priest that was talked about in the previous section, the man that the old man was protecting when they came to, they said to the old man, bring out the man that came here. Was that the Levite priest from the previous section or somebody
No, it
else?
seems to be a different one. And so, yeah, the Danites settled in Laish, and this guy at the beginning of chapter 19, he comes from the hill country of Ephraim. So they are different, both Levites, but different people.
Okay.
So, so the instead of agreeing to bring out the small amount who were actually guilty, they decided to stick by them and condemn themselves, the whole tribe, if you will.
Mhm.
I mean, not the whole tribe, but 25,000 when it was probably, was maybe, I forget how many, was it 30? Or did they say how many was that did the deed?
I don't think they said. I think they just said it was. They just call them a perverse lot. So they don't say how many, but it's clearly not in the 20-some thousand range. But the Benjaminites seem to think that their loyalty is to their tribe rather than to fidelity to the covenant. And it's interesting what the other tribes say. Hand over those scoundrels so we may purge the evil from Israel. And that's language that we would hear a lot in Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. It's kind of this idea of we need to kind of cut out the bad elements that are going to continue to lead us astray. Um, but yeah, I think maybe it's that idea of they are choosing tribe over covenant.
Is this like a premonition of the tribes that became lost? Like they're talking about the Benjaminites here, or is this a little early for that sort of thing? Or is that what this ultimately leads to?
No, I think it is so the reason the lost tribes are called lost, and that is a couple centuries in the future from this point,
Okay.
um, is that the Assyrians, the people who conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, and of course the Deuteronomists, the people who wrote Judges, also probably wrote the books of First and Second Kings, where it tells the story of the fall of the kingdom of Israel. Um, they very much will come right out and interpret it as these people have so forgotten the covenant. These people have so bought into idol worship and other gods that they bring this on themselves. The Assyrians were known to just pick up populations of people and kind of disperse them throughout their empire. So they become lost tribes in the sense that they are not able to maintain the identity which they had as Israelites or as whichever particular tribe, because a few of them were thrown over here and a few of them were thrown over there, and likely through intermarriage, they they just kind of lost that identity and they just became whatever region they ended up in. They said, well, we're Hittites because they're living in that part of the world now. Um, so I guess the only connection I would make is that it's once again this idea of when you worship other gods, when you go after other gods, when you fail to abide by the covenant, it is going to create disaster. Um, and certainly for the Benjaminites here, they are not abiding by the covenant, and it creates a disaster. And then, Tom, will you share with us, please, the very last verse of the book of Judges, chapter 21, verse 25? This refrain comes up a few times throughout the second half of the book of Judges. I think we've already heard it once, but go ahead and share that with us. It's kind of the exclamation point at the end of the book.
In those days, there was no king in Israel. All the people did what was right in their own eyes.
What do we make of that? Why is that the last, or why might that have been the very last thing that they wanted us to think on?
That the people had fallen so far from God, there seemed to be no hope at this point.
Yeah, I mean, God has been pretty clear in a lot of respects about what is considered right, but people are just doing what's right in their own eyes rather than in what God has instructed them about. So typically, when we read a book out of the Hebrew Bible together, one of the last things we do is we look at in what ways have the New Testament authors received that tradition, appropriated it for their own use, interpreted it, used it to shape their stories. And there seems to be very little of that going on with the book of Judges. To the best of my knowledge, we only have a single reference to Judges in the whole of the New Testament. Mark, will you share that with us? It is in Hebrews 11, verses 29 through 34.
By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as if it were dry land. But when the Egyptians attempted to do so, they were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after they had been encircled for 7 days. By faith, Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had received the spies in peace. And what more should I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, obtained promises, shut the mouths of lions, quenched raging fire, escaped the edge of the sword, won strength out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. Women received their dead by resurrection. Others were tortured, refusing to accept release in order to obtain a better resurrection. Others suffered mocking and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were stoned to death. They were sawn in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, persecuted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and holes in the ground. Yet all these, though they were commended for their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better, so that they would not, apart from us, be made perfect.
So the author here is talking about
Oh, I
the.
went too far.
That's okay. It's it's rarely a bad thing to get a couple more verses of scripture, especially we are here for Bible study. That's okay. So yeah, he's talking about various kind of heroes of the faith, and he talks about Abel and Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Moses, and then he lists a bunch of other people pretty quickly. He lists 4 of the judges, and then jumps right to David and Samuel. Why do you think the New Testament uses or relies on the book of Judges so little?
Were those books available to them? They
Yes.
had they had Judges and the,
Nothing worth talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps maybe they didn't feel that it was going to add to their proclamation of the gospel.
Kind of
It
an
doesn't-
embarrassing history. It's not a real high spot.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like
and there's
talking
not
about,
a lot of hope,
yeah,
Pardon?
not a lot of hope.
Yeah.
Although it would say something had they mentioned it that, that they were God's chosen people, and even though they were behaving so poorly, God didn't leave them.
Yeah,
That
I
might be
was
a point worthwhile.
I was thinking very much the same thing. This idea of even at the kind of lowest ebb of where the people were in terms of their abiding by the covenant, God kept raising up these judges for them. God did not just wash the divine hands and say, "Yep, I've had it with these folks." God continued to stick with them. So I think that I could very easily see one of the New Testament authors lifting that up. But yeah, and it may just be that they might have looked at Judges and went, "There's not really anything here that's going to help me make the case about what I want to talk about here." So, where are folks at with Judges? What are your kind of thoughts overall, having done a pretty good, thorough study of this book now?
I would say that You know, I think back to Martin Luther, who stated about the, I guess, for lack of a better word, the lack of being well versed in the Old Testament, that it has, you know, of limited value, at least to some degree. Um, but I would say in reading the first 5 books of the, you know, the Torah, I would have to say that I would disagree with Luther on that, because I think there's a lot of good stuff there, a lot of you know, a lot of things that are the foundation of things in the New Testament. And I would say probably throw Joshua along with that too. But once we get to Judges, I don't see, I would put this under, yes, Luther was right about this book. There's probably not necessarily a whole lot of reason to study it. So I guess that's my take. But I mentioned this to Shirley, knowing that she wasn't going to be able to be here tonight, and she did disagree with me. She said that you have to understand that every book, there's something important about it with respect to identifying, you know, who God is. You know, I don't know if I agree with her on this, but you know, she might be a little more hardline than I am with respect to that concept. But the only other thing I could see after reading this tonight, and then with Hebrews that we just talked about, maybe its value is that things were so, you know, rotten, and that I'm assuming that when we pick things up with Samuel and then the Kings, that will serve as a contrast to that. So I guess if there's going to be anything good about Judges or worthwhile, it's only perhaps as a contrast to that. But that's probably where I would leave it. But otherwise, it could be skipped, and I don't think you'd miss a whole heck of a lot in terms of one's knowledge of, or worthwhile knowledge of the scriptures, and of what that means through knowledge of God.
Where are other folks at with Judges here? Things that challenged you, or maybe something in studying this book that built you up or strengthened your faith.
Well, the first 3 Judges builds up.
Yeah, so certainly we have a faithful witness at the beginning of the book.
It kind of gave me a little bit of hope, because these are really imperfect people that God chose to work through. So maybe when you know, you're dealing with somebody that you don't particularly like or like their ways, you never know. They could be being used for a purpose that we don't, you know, I don't understand, you know, possibly. So it kind of gives me pause to not judge, pardon the pun.
And you know, I had a professor of Old Testament who, you know, said one thing that you absolutely learn when you're reading the Hebrew Bible: God chooses to work through a variety of strange individuals. And I think that is equally true now as it was then. But yeah, that in spite of how imperfect some of the judges were, God is still able to use them to deliver the people.
What one little tidbit though, which I guess could perhaps say quite a bit, was this very last verse 25 that I had read. In those days there was no king in Israel, but then here's the key thing: all the people did what was right in their own eyes. You know, one can make the argument that, you know, in today's modern secular world, that's really the definition, in my mind, of what secularism is. It's people doing what's right in their own eyes. So, that obviously, that would be kind of a heavy indictment of, a lot of today's culture, but, saying that these very old scriptures were pointing to the danger of that way back then.
Yeah, and I think as we read it, particularly against the backdrop of that last story with the Benjaminites, they did what was right in their eyes, which was protecting the other Benjaminites. The rest of the Israelites were saying, there are some bad actors here that we need to get rid of. And so, yeah, kind of that idea of, only being able to see as far as the tip of your own nose in terms of, I want to do what's going to benefit me right now. You know, that is what some of the people are considering right in their own sight. Yeah, it is interesting to read that, against the backdrop of America, where that is a big part of kind of what we lift up, is the freedom of choice we have in so many things to, do what we think is the right thing. Now, obviously, we have laws, we have systems for enforcing those laws. We as a country have come together and said, there are a number of things that are not the right thing. But yeah, it just is. Yeah, it's interesting to read that from the perspective of somebody in a country where that is something we lift up as important to us.
I think throughout history of Israel and our own country, good things have come from very dark periods in history. So I think it motivates us, or maybe we see the light and try to go in a different direction.
Yeah, and I think that to put a theological interpretation on that, it's death and resurrection. Um, the idea of we're going to be this confederation of 12 tribes that have the God of Abraham as our king. That system is very clearly dying, and by the time we get to the end of the book of Judges, he is gone. There is no system. Out of the death of that, we have the creation of the monarchy and what God does through David and his dynasty, and how important, as Christians, how important David is in getting us to Jesus. So never forget about death and resurrection.
I don't think I ever remember Jesus referencing Judges at all.
I don't think so.
You know?
Other thoughts, other reflections on Judges?
Well, anyone that says that the Bible is boring to read could be pointed in that direction and said, nah, it's really not very boring. This is not a boring book. It's
Yep,
full of as much gore as any war history or any novel that you might read.
yeah, and I think we I think we should take it with a grain of salt when people say, I want to pull my values from the Bible. The Bible is pretty clear about which values are the faithful ones and which are not. But maybe to be a little more clear, I want to pull my values from the ones the Bible lifts up as being the correct ones. I don't want to just open to a random page in the Bible and say, this is going to be my guide. Well, what happens if I open up to Judges 19? But again,
Or anyone, it always shows how complex people are.
yeah, and to remember that just because these are ancient people and they don't have the same tools that we have, and they may not have the depth of understanding about how some things work, do not make the mistake of thinking that they are simple. You know, to a large extent, people are people. They are wrestling with a lot of the same questions. Their motivations are almost always mixed. And I think that is the fact that people are people. However many things are different across cultures, across time. That's one of the reasons these stories still speak to us. Because even though there's so many things that are different, we can still, to a large extent, understand where folks are coming from. And I think it's the same thing when I read ancient Greek and Roman stuff. Again, for as different as these people were from me, they're asking a lot of the same questions. They're trying to do a lot of the same things. They're trying to make sense of the world, and a lot of times there are things that make no sense at all.
And that still happens today with senseless acts of violence and insane sort of events that happen. I mean, it's like you said, we can be kind of smug. Well, these are just these nomads, simpletons from a couple thousand years ago or more, closer to 3,000, I guess. But no, they may not have all the doodads and comforts and so on and so forth, but the things that drive them are really still the same as for people today.
Yeah, absolutely. So we typically wrap up by Memorial Day, which is going to be this coming Monday. So this will be our last study for the spring. We will get back together again right after Labor Day in September. In the meantime, our group that meets Sunday mornings at 9:30, so right after the early service on Sunday mornings, I believe they are going to continue to meet throughout the summer. So if you are able to make it at 9:30 on Sundays, certainly feel free to hop in with our Sunday morning crew. And then during the time off during the summer, it will allow me to create some more lessons and put in the time to make sure that I can bring you what I hope is going to be some good insightful study in the fall. So that is what I have for you tonight.
Thank you so much, Pastor. They're always wonderful.
Well, you are so welcome. I always enjoy having the time to be together and study. I feel like this is one of the parts of being a pastor that maybe I'm a little better at than some of the other ones. So being able to be here and kind of do a nice deep dive into this and spend some time thrashing around. Yes, this is always one of the good parts of my week. Well, why don't we conclude our study tonight, praying the Lord's Prayer together. Would someone be willing to say the Lord's Prayer on behalf of the group?
I will.
Thank you.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you everybody for being with me throughout the year, and we'll see everybody soon.
Happy
Enjoy
birthday,
the
Pastor.
enjoy the rest of
Thank
your
you.
birthday.
Will
Yeah.
do.
You have
Will
a few
do.
hours left.
That's right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All
Good
right,
night.
have a good summer.
You too. We'll see you in September.
You bet.
Good.
Stay
Take
cool,
care.
Carol.
Oh, yeah.